And again, what we saw in the polls was the same. So at the end of November, even after he lost the election in 2020, 44% of folks approved of Trump. By January, after January 6th, that went down to 38%.
Oh.
So it was a very sort of major hit in the polls. And it looked like he was done. From there, 2021, things were quiet. We didn't hear much from Trump. Obviously, it was Biden's first year. Biden was riding high, had a pretty high approval rating. And then things started to somewhat change that summer when America pulled out of Afghanistan. We saw the sort of chaos that ensued there. That was crazy.
Terrible.
Nobody looking at that thought, oh, man, this looks well organized. This looks competent. No, it was, frankly, I think everybody would acknowledge it looked like a stain on America's reputation.
Yeah, that was embarrassing. Embarrassing.
Yeah, and you're saying that as a non-American. Me, as an American, I was embarrassed. What is this? It looked terrible. It looked awful. So that started the slow decline. Well, that was a rapid decline, but then a slow and steady decline from Biden's support moving forward. So what we saw after, again, now we go into 2022, was August 2022, Trump's house was raided by the FBI, his house in Florida, looking for sensitive documents that supposedly he was mishandling. So this began the narrative of, okay, the law enforcement's going after Trump, starting to sort of build the narrative around, is he a victim versus, somebody who perpetrated, whatever it was, poorly handling COVID, January 6th, all this stuff. So again, narrative slowly starting to change.
2022 is like mid-Biden's term, right?
Exactly, right in the middle of the term. And then that November 2022, you had Ron DeSantis win. So you've heard of this guy, Ron DeSantis?
No, tell me.
Okay, he's the current governor of Florida, a Trump acolyte in many ways. So Trump elevated this guy, endorsed him in 2018 in the governor's race in Florida, a very key swing state, Trump's current home state. And again, he won in 2018, narrowly becoming governor. And then in 2022, he pulled off and got a lot of headlines during COVID for being one of the few governors who stood up to a guy named Anthony Fauci, who was the, was leading the medical response from an American perspective in terms of policy, setting recommendations. He was one of the first governors to say, keep your states open. We're not going to restrict you. Florida is, I think he even said like an open state, whatever the case was, a freedom state, encouraging people to come to Florida, don't lock down, and was very sort of against all these restrictive COVID measures. That made him very popular. He won in 2022 by the largest margin of a Republican in modern history by almost 20 points. So Florida is historically a swing state, and a Republican governor won by 20 percentage points. Suddenly everybody's thinking, Ron DeSantis might be the next best thing. Look at how he's handled Florida. Look at the support he's gotten. He just won Florida by 20 points, a swing state, a state that was as divided as America. So now the narrative was, could Ron DeSantis be the new Republican standard bearer? Do we ditch Trump? That brings us into 2023. So 2023, Trump was leading in February of 2023. So again, a year and a half ago, he was leading against DeSantis in the polls by only 8 points. The former president locked in a fairly close race with DeSantis, again, by 8 points. And then everything changes. So I remember watching it and I was thinking, I think DeSantis is going to be the guy. I think Trump might be done.